SCCY CPX-2 versus TAURUS G2C, head to head. So I acquired this TAURUS G2C earlier this year and I was impressed with it. I enjoyed doing a first 100 with it and I swore I'd get it back out here. I swore I would compare it to something. And I suggested that this SCCY CPX-2 might be a good comparison, and I still think that way, and so that's what I'm doing today. There are some differences. We'll talk about the specifications and the numbers. The TAURUS is a slightly larger gun, but not by much, and there's a couple areas where it's not larger. We'll talk about those. The TAURUS has larger capacity. It holds 12 in the magazines versus 10 for the SCCY. Obviously an advantage for the TAURUS, but again, there's a trade-off in the size that accommodates that. So we'll talk about those things, but I'm at the range right now, as you can plainly see and hear, and so what I'm going to do now is focus on shooting. I'm going to start out with the SCCY. 10 round magazines. It comes with two. They both come with two magazines. I'm just shooting range ammo, MagTech and Herders and a mixture thereof. If I switch to anything significant or important, I'll let you know about that. I have a dot for each of the guns on that target. I'm going to go left to right, starting with the SCCY. Definitely shoots high, doesn't it? All right, looks good. Group's a little bit high. I was using a center hold, but I'm only at 7 yards, so I'm not too far away from that target. This is 115 grain ammo. It's not as important where the group is as how big the group is. Now let's move over to the TAURUS. Go to the right side of that same target. I have loaded each of these magazines to their capacity. So the TAURUS is going to have 12 rounds versus the SCCY's 10. I thought it only fair to test them each with their full capacity. Both of the magazines load up nicely. You can see the TAURUS is a little more true to aim point here with the same center hold. They both have a 3-dot sight picture. And the TAURUS has a much shorter trigger stroke and a better reset. But the SCCY has, I think, a nicer feeling trigger. Smoother. Okay, back to the SCCY. 10 rounds. Got the longer trigger pull, but nicer feeling trigger pull. I like the sight picture better on the SCCY. The sights sit up a little bit taller, which could be a disadvantage in terms of snagging and carry, but good for shooting. And it's just a cleaner 3-dot sight picture. It is a hammer-fired gun with double action only. So it's the same trigger pull each and every time, very long, but very smooth every single time. Once you got used to that, it's very consistent. And I like the feel not only of the pull, but I like the feel of the trigger itself, the physical face of the trigger. Feels pretty good on your finger, and it's comfortable to shoot. Back to the Taurus. And the Taurus slide release is a little harder to use. This trigger almost feels like a dead trigger. Like right now, so I'm prepping my trigger. I'm bringing it back to break this first shot, and it feels to me like, oh, what happened? I've got a dead trigger. But that's not the case. It's just back at the wall. It just feels awkward. There's more airspace in the sight picture of the Taurus. That reset is nice though. It's not terribly tactile, but it is short. The trigger is irritating to the finger. I think I observed that on my first 100. The grip though is very nice. Very comfortable grip. I know some of you people really hate when I do that. It's not all just for silly effect. I do like to test the mag release, and I do like to demonstrate for you how easily or not it works, how cleanly or not the magazines drop. And in this case, with both of these guns, the mag release buttons are very small. I'll show you those closer, but they're both very good, very effective. They work nicely. I think I prefer the mag release on the SCCY a little bit, but they both work good. Mags both drop clean. Mags both load nicely. The springs are not too tight when you get up top to that last couple rounds. So kudos to both on good magazines and good operation in the pistol. Alright, so you can see, looking first at the SCCY group. So the SCCY group printed a little bit high, but it's not as important where it is as how big it is. You can always move a group, but you can't move a scatter. So that's not a bad group, all in all, for a day's work. And you can see things started to open up as I shot a little faster. I started to throw a little more wild shots, but all in all, not bad at all. And then moving over to the TAURUS G2C, it shot much more to my elevation of where I was holding, a little to my left, but that is so consistent that that's either me having an issue with the trigger, which could be because it's not my favorite trigger, or could be that maybe that rear sight needs to be drifted a little bit. But not bad again, and of course, as I started to shoot faster, things got a little wilder. But I'd be happy with either of these at self-defense distances as a protection gun, whether it's concealed carry or home defense. Okay, trigger pull, starting with the SCCY, which is of course hammer fired and double action only. £8 11 ounces, which is actually pretty good, isn't it? And it is a nice smooth trigger, as I've been saying all along. G2C double action pull, striker fired, and it is a nice light one. 5 pounds, 12.5 ounces, so just under 6 pounds for that. The SCCY, as I said, is a hammer-fired pistol. Same trigger every time. The trigger pull is long, but it is smooth, and it's quite enjoyable to shoot, actually. TAURUS, on the other hand, the G2C, is a striker-fired gun. But interestingly, it also has a double action only trigger. Sorta. Sorta, kinda. Let me demonstrate. So I've got a clear empty gun here, pull the trigger, and I can keep pulling the trigger. So what you've got is restrike capabilities with a striker-fire pistol, which isn't something you see all that often. There is a difference in the feel of the trigger between that first pull and subsequent pulls, but not much. It's kind of the same pull every time too. But you have that shorter reset. And you do have 2 extra rounds. I've got a Talon grip on both of these guns. That's a no-brainer for me. I love my Talon grips. You know, when I first got this SCCY, I had some problems. When I did, if you ever saw my first 100 on this, it was full of problems, malfunctions. I sent it back to SCCY. They fixed it up. I think they did some work on the magazines, to be honest, and sent it back to me, and it has been flawless ever since. So, their customer service was good, their repair work was good and quick, and the gun has been perfect ever since that. The smaller grip on the TAURUS is something I kind of prefer. And it too shoots very, very nicely. Okay, let's look at the specs on these two guns. Even though they have one major difference in that one is striker fired and the other is hammer fired, that doesn't really change them as much as it does normally because they are both a double action only type of trigger and they both have restrike capabilities. The barrel length is 3.25 inches on the TAURUS and 3.1 inches on the SCCY, so a slightly shorter barrel by just a tiny amount. Overall length is 6 1/4 for the G2C versus 6.0 for the CPX-2. That corresponds with the barrel length. Now, if you're thinking about concealed carry, one of the dimensions that's the most important is the height. And the height is 5 inches even on the TAURUS, but it's only 4.2 inches on the SCCY, which is going to make it a little bit more of a concealable pistol. The weight is 21.15 ounces for the TAURUS versus 15 ounces for the SCCY, and there's a pretty huge distinction there. The TAURUS is significantly heavier, than the SCCY. The grips, of course, for both are polymer. They are polymer framed handguns. The sights are 3-dot configurations for both. The rear is fully adjustable on the TAURUS. The rear is only adjustable for windage on the SCCY. Both pistols have a stainless steel slide. This TAURUS has exposed stainless or a matte finish stainless. Both are polymer framed, of course, but the SCCY inside the polymer frame has an aluminum alloy frame with very long rails. Capacity is another major difference in favor of the TAURUS, with 12 rounds in the magazine and 10 rounds for the SCCY in the magazine. There's also a bit of a significant difference in the width of these two guns. 1.25 inches is the width of the TAURUS, and the SCCY comes in a little thinner at 1.1, and that's also going to make it a little easier to carry inside the waistband if that's how you carry. I think both of these pistols are an excellent value. I'm going to give you just the MSRPs because I'm not going to get into who sells what cheaper where on any given Sunday. MSRP for the TAURUS is $332.82, which is a pretty odd number, and MSRP for the SCCY is $269.99. So they're somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 apart, with the TAURUS being the more expensive of the two. One small detail worth noting is the difference in the feed ramps and just the quality of the part. So on the left is the SCCY, on the right is the TAURUS, and you can see the difference in the way these feed ramps are polished. The TAURUS is actually not bad. I mean, it's certainly no, world-class 1911 polished feed ramp or anything, but it is decently polished, right? But in contrast, the one for the SCCY, let me get an angle on it where the light really shows you. There you go. Kind of looks like it was polished by the guy who does chainsaw ice sculptures or something. So, I mean, it works okay. I didn't have any failures to feed, but it's just a questionable quality. I mean, I don't know how you call that okay. And this is an interesting, and right there, about a quarter of the way up, look at that steep angle, that change of angle right there. It's pretty steep. So, like I say, it works. So, if it works, it works. But maybe it's just cosmetic. But I don't know. It's rough. I mean, you can feel it. You can feel how rough that is. So. And just a point of interest, SCCY also uses a closed link in their barrel instead of a open lug as most do at this point. So just a point of interest, and man, that is thin at the bottom. So good job milling that out. Okay, a few final thoughts and words on these two guns. So for starters, I like them both. I think that they are both very good, affordable handguns, and I think they both answer the need for, that budget-friendly self-defense firearm. The SCCY is a hammer-fired gun. You can see, if I get the light just right, we'll see that hammer working. See it? That internal hammer. And because of that, it's a double action only. The hammer is always set back to the fully rested position, even after the slide reciprocates. So we always have this long trigger pull. Now you'll notice during this video when I'm shooting, actually both of these guns, but definitely more with the SCCY, I am absolutely no super ninja when it comes to the trigger on this gun. I short stroke quite a few times, or I sort of, misstroke, like I didn't let it out all the way. That would go away if I shot it more and practiced with it, but just, it really does go to show that, it is a long and unusual trigger stroke. So you have to almost treat this thing like a little revolver in that respect. That's basically how it shoots. But other than that, it shoots great. I had a problem initially with it. SCCY took care of it. They fixed it. They sent it back to me. And since then, I've had hundreds of rounds go through it. And I've had zero malfunctions of any kind. So I am happy with it and convinced that it is a reliable and durable handgun. Now, one of the things I think that I would change, this is just me personally, I would remove this extra 1/4 of an inch or more that we've got on the back strap here. That's supposed to be a cushion against recoil. I would get rid of that. This is a 9mm gun. It's not so much recoil that somebody can't handle it. And look what it does to the grip. I mean, that I can show you measurements, with the ruler, but probably the best way to show you the distinction between these two grips is this. Here's my normal grip. I'm not trying to do anything different in here. Here's my normal grip with the SCCY, and just look at my thumb position as opposed to my middle finger position. And then here's the G2C, and I take that same normal grip, and look, you can see the difference. I mean, not only has the gap closed, my thumb has overlapped my middle finger. It almost completely covers the fingernail. So it's that much different in grip. And I think what you might gain in any kind of shock absorption by that backstrap is completely negated by the fact that it's going to limit people with smaller hands, and I think a lot of those people are the target market for this type of gun. Now the G2C, my big complaint here was and is that the trigger can be a little irritating to the finger. The trigger safety, that is, you can see it there extended in the center of the trigger, is very obtrusive, and it's very stiff, and it's an irritant, to the trigger, or to the trigger finger. The one thing I did notice, though, if I shoot the gun rapidly, and if I get more finger in there, so I typically, part of that is my shooting style, because I typically will shoot right here. I like to shoot with the pad, sort of center pad of my trigger finger. I feel like I have better trigger control doing that. Whether I do or not, I don't know, but I feel like I do. I found with this gun, I have to get in here like this. If I get in here right into that joint, that first joint, then just run the trigger, then it doesn't really bother me. So if you shoot finger pad, you're probably going to be bothered by this trigger safety, because it is a bit annoying and it can be an irritant. But if you extend your finger in further, which the grip does definitely allow you to do, when you do that, it is not irritating at all. Other things that I talked about while I was shooting it, like whether I liked one set of sights versus the other, or just, small little details. But the guns are essentially very similar in size, very similar in capacity. This one does carry 2 more rounds than this one does. So if you are in the market for a small 9mm pistol and you're trying to choose between these two, or maybe these two and some others. So if you sent me a message on, the Just an Opinion channel Facebook page or something tomorrow and said, hey, I chose the Sky, I would probably say, good job, nice choice, and I think it's going to serve you well. And if you said, you know what, I chose the TAURUS G2C, I would say the same thing. I would say good choice. I think you chose well, and I think it's going to serve you well. So I feel that way about both of these guns. I have things I like and dislike about them each, if I want to be picky, but they both perform very well. And in the budget handgun market, I think they're both good options.